Hi, I'm Anush Salaniwal,
I'm Michael Ohayon.
and we'll be the hosts for today's podcast. For those who don't know, the Scripps Trench Professional Career Exploration Club is an organization dedicated to interviewing professionals for many different career paths. We aim to help students find a career that's right for them.
And we have a very special guest today. Everyone give a warm welcome to Dr. Eli Ohayon. Dr. Ohayon is a pediatric anesthesiologist for 17 years and is currently respecializing in family medicine at UCSD. He's studied at UT Southwestern, UCSF, and trained at Stanford. Dr. Ohayon, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So, Dr. Ohayon, what was your biggest challenge during your schooling?
The biggest challenge I would say is perseverance. It's the stick-to-itiveness that's really probably the most important skill. Nothing we do is really exceptionally complicated. It's just a matter of putting in the time and the years to get to where you need to go.
Awesome. So how do you choose a specialty that's right for you? So you have all these options, right? There's hundreds of specialties to choose from. How do you find one that suits you, whether it be lifestyle or income?
That's a great question. I don't know if you find the right specialty or if the right specialty finds you. Sometimes fate has a lot to do with it. A lot of people going into medical school, they know exactly what they're going to do for residency, and most of them are absolutely wrong. And it's for some good reasons. It's you go into medical school, you have an idea in your mind, but the idea isn't really based on reality. Once you start exploring the rotations and you go on all the different rotations, you can just automatically find something you never thought that you would enjoy, and it just calls to you, and you just really sometimes click with a certain specialty that you had no idea that even it existed, which I guess brings me to the important point. Some advice that I always give medical students is keep an open mind, enjoy every rotation, make the most of it, because they're all fun, they're all interesting. You're gonna get some good life pearls from each one of them, and you never know which one's gonna click with you.
So, I heard you're in residency right now?
That's correct.
So, how's residency like?
Residency is, it's a lot of work. This is my second round of residency, doing it a lot later than most residents, since it's my second time around. And it's very similar as the first time with respect to huge learning curve, a lot of work, not a lot of sleep. That's similar. Things that are dissimilar would be generational changes in attitudes on the residency, and then my perspective being having been an anesthesiologist in practice for 17 years, I bring a different perspective than somebody who just came out of medical school. So it's completely different in that respect.
And follow up on that, how do you think the profession's changed since COVID? Because I know it's put a lot of stress on the specialty teams that have gone from other specialties, and now we're working in the COVID unit. How do you think it's changed?
Interesting. First of all, when I was in medical school in the 90s, the big thing was HIV/AIDS. It was the new disease, the scary disease, and interestingly, as a fourth-year medical student, just about all my patients in the hospital were AIDS-related complications and diseases that we were treating. From medical school, 1 month later, I went to Northern California to do my residency, and I don't think I had one AIDS-related patient in the hospital, and that's because of the new antiretrovirals that they developed for HIV. And it's just amazing how quickly it shifted the whole dynamics of medicine. It's still there. There's still a lot of AIDS out there. There's still a lot of HIV out there. But actually, there's less AIDS, there's more HIV positive patients that are controlled, so you see less of the AIDS symptom complex because it's so controlled. So I kind of went through this once where there's this big scary epidemic that's coming around and it gets controlled and then it sort of shifts things. So now I'm seeing it again with COVID. It's a new scary disease that's sort of taking our society by storm. And I'm hoping that just like HIV, I'm hoping that we're going to get better control over it and it'll be a quick shift away from it.
All right.
So as a student, I know that being a doctor is a very famous career. So what would you say to other students to kind of prepare for med school?
With respect to what?
With like what are the best ways, like trying to get being at the top?
What would you have wanted to learn as a high school or college student that you really wish you would have told yourself before you started med school?
That's a good question. The reality is you have to have good grades. The reality is it's a very competitive career choice. Having said that, there are plenty of people who come out of high school, college with 4.0s, 4.5s, and great MCAT scores. So what I found is that you need something to distinguish yourself, because as a medical school admission committee, you're looking at all these amazing students who have amazing grades, amazing MCAT scores. They're all very excited, very enthusiastic, but they're all the same. You've got thousands and thousands of applicants that look the same. What makes you special? And so I would say that putting in the time for the grades is absolutely essential. Studying for the tests, absolutely essential. But what makes you different? What have you done special? If you could find that little special spark that distinguishes you, I think that that's probably the most important thing.
So when you were going into med school, what was your special spark? What made you unique?
Well, that's tough. It's always hard to say what makes you unique. I'm not sure that I was very unique. I don't know. I guess I had the grades, I had the MCAT, and I don't know if my essay was good or if my interviewing skills were exceptional or what it was that they saw in me. I was not accepted to every medical school I applied to, so it couldn't have been some amazing attribute that I have. I haven't been to competed in the Olympics, or I'm not didn't have a startup that was amazing and amazingly successful. I don't know. I worked hard. I worked full-time during college. I was active in student government. I did research. I think I did some well-rounded things that maybe they saw as being a well-rounded human being, as opposed to just somebody who studied 24/7 and had perfect grades and perfect MCAT score. So I think that would probably be it.
Awesome. So, like from preschool to residency, what do you think was the lowest point, like the most difficult challenge, the part where you were really considering, stopping on your path of academic excellence, and instead wanted to shift to something easier, but you stopped yourself? What was that low point like?
I guess first of all, I was sort of a late bloomer, because it was really in college that I got the spark to study hard, to learn, to enjoy learning. And it was really in college that I started to get interested and excelled in academics and had the interest in medicine. And so, in a way, luckily, I didn't have those years of hard work to lead to a burnout. I kind of just was starting out, and I think that was helpful. A low point, I really honestly, except for little little sort of setbacks, relationship issues. Sometimes you don't perform as well in certain rotations as you'd like. Sometimes you could be hard on yourself for that. But I really never had a really low point that ever made me question what I'm doing. I really enjoyed it. I really made the most of everything. And I don't know if I'm lucky or if it's just sort of the attitude of being positive and enjoying it.
So, when did you know that you wanted to become a doctor?
I guess my role model was out of high school. I started working with a dentist, and I got the job with the dentist and looked for that job because my uncle is a dentist, and in the family he was always looked up to. He's your uncle the dentist, and so that was the one thing that I knew. And then I was lucky enough to work out of high school with a dentist who was an amazing mentor and role model, and he really took me under his wing. He really gave me amazing advice and sort of led me down a good road with the preparation and the expectations that would sort of be necessary, especially for me not having the background of a family where everybody's a physician. So he really was, I owe a lot to him, and I really appreciate that.
Okay, so it's like a role model kind of. Okay.
And compared to the last question I asked, what was your highest point? Like where you were just on top of the world during your schooling?
I guess it goes back to having that perseverance, and it's a long road. And my attitude was always that every step that I would accomplish, graduating college, was a high point. And I felt like, wow, I made it that far. Then graduating medical school, I made it that, and every step was just self-reinforcing. And then certainly there were little exciting moments during the process. But in my mind, I sort of always had the, okay, check, 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 check.
So, like a lot of students now, they don't know what they want to become until they are a freshman in college. But to the pre-meds in high school that know they want to become a doctor, what advice would you give?
I would say that you should pace yourself. One of the advice I give to people going into college is when you enter and you take your classes, you don't want to start your freshman year with all these difficult classes, because you can't really afford to stumble too hard. It's too competitive. So you want to prepare yourself. It's a huge adjustment starting college, and you want to give yourself as much of a chance as you can. So you start off with maybe 1 or 2 difficult classes per semester, and then make sure you pad it with a couple breathers so that you have a more balanced schedule, so that you can deal with it and deal with the sort of orienting yourself to college and acclimating yourself. There's a lot going on when you're starting. Again, if you're dealing with some really difficult classes, then you're just going to make it that much more difficult on yourself.
Alright, So how about the kids who are, they're almost done with college and they're about to become med students? What would you recommend to them?
I would recommend that once you've been accepted, it's okay to take a year off. A lot of medical schools will allow for sort of that gap year. It's good to explore a little bit, explore yourself, explore the world. Once you hit medical school, things become sort of all-consuming, and I think it's a mistake to just plow forward and not develop yourself as a human being. The people like me, as I look back, the people who I think I envy that they did that, is they took advantage of every block of time they had. They would go to Europe, they would go to Africa, they would go to Asia, they would have these amazing trips and amazing experiences, and I felt like maybe I was studying, or I was working to earn money, or I was doing these things, and everybody does what they can. You don't have to do an exotic, expensive vacation, but you could go on a road trip and go camping, you can explore national parks, but it's really good and important to develop yourself, because once you hit medical school, you'll still have time, but it'll be less. And once you start medical school and go to residency, life has a way of sort of taking up all your time.
So many med students are nervous for residency. Because residency is really hard. So like, what would you give advice? Like, any advice for that kind of residence?
So I think that's a more advanced sort of level question. I think that when you're in medical school, it's a whole different set of questions that you ask yourself. You have to find the residency and specialty that importantly is a specialty not only that you're interested in, but that has a lifestyle that is sort of fits how you want your lifestyle to be. It sounds great to say I'm a neurosurgeon, but I know a lot of neurosurgeons who sacrifice their lives, and it really, if that's not how you want your lifestyle to be, you will regret having to work that hard and not living the way you want to live. So I would say that you pick a specialty. It has to call to you, it has to speak to you, but also it has to be able to have a lifestyle that you want to live.
So what you're advising really is to just find a balance between what's good for you and what you need to do.
Absolutely. And things are changing, so there for sure are more opportunities that there weren't, let's say, 20 years ago. As an example, if you were an OBGYN and you had your practice, you had your patients in clinic that you were seeing every day, and then if your baby is being born, you have to be there for it. And so you have to jump out of your clinic, you have to, in the middle of the night, in the middle of dinner, and you're always on, and you're always being called, and that is a really demanding lifestyle. And that's changed, because now most OBGYNs work in a group, and they share the OB call, and so if your patient is having a baby at midnight or 1 in the morning, it may be your partner who's on that night, and so you don't have to go in, and so you share the call. So there are more opportunities like that. There are more opportunities of group practices that share responsibilities. That is a new model in medicine that wasn't there 20 years ago.
And I mean, when you're in residency, you're at a really pivotal point in your life. I mean, this is late 20s, early 30s. You're thinking about a family, a long time home, and on top of that, you're deciding what career you're going to have for the foreseeable future. I mean, maybe till the 70s even. What do you think people should accept a lot of responsibility and then try to, match up to it? Or do you think at that point people can start to take a look at their life and understand that maybe they want things easier for the next 4 years?
There's no question that the choice of medicine as a career involves a lot of sacrifice. And there's no question that residency and further training is going to absorb your life. It will be most of your life. And it's a sacrifice you make into your 30s. And so for sure, I had classmates, colleagues from college who were already practicing, who were already not practicing, but had their own careers in business and in engineering, and they were already well on their way to starting a family, to buying a house, to saving money, and that was very different from my colleagues in medicine who were plowing along, who did not have much time, and who were not in a position where they could easily start a family, buy a house, and do what we sort of think as being the normal progression. It's definitely delayed, and it's definitely delayed gratification. I think it's worth it, but you have to have that perseverance.
So I know some people, after becoming doctors, they take like an MBA course for like becoming a manager. So I mean, would you say like it's worth it to take an extra 2 years to get hired?
That's a good question. Definitely the medical education system does not prepare you for business. It does not prepare you for starting your own practice. That is a deficiency, but at the same time, the field of medicine has evolved in a way that most physicians are not opening up their own practice. You're joining a huge multi-specialty group, and so almost all practices these days are group practices that tend to be professionally managed, sometimes by the physicians themselves who decide to get an MBA and become part of the management process. But it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a savvy businessman to open your practice like you used to maybe 20 years before.
So, if you were to do it all over again, as a resident, you just graduated, let's say, and you don't have a choice between what you were talking about, which is the public, kind of a public practice where you join, say, Kaiser or Sharp or some large group with a bunch of different specialties, or will you join or start a private practice? Like starting now, 2020, what would your choice be?
That's a complicated question. It's almost, I don't want to say it's not possible to have a private practice. It's extremely uncommon, and it's extremely difficult dealing with the regulatory issues and having to understand them and follow them, and the electronic medical record, which is sort of a required thing in a practice. There are so many regulatory issues that need to be dealt with that I think it's becoming almost impossible for one person to be able to manage that and still practice medicine. So the day of a private practice is really going away.
Well, Dr. Han, it was lovely having you here. I'm sure everybody reading the podcast took a lot from this interview and learned a lot to become a doctor.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Presley. It's a pleasure.